quick chance to talk about what I do. So Savannah Ag Research is our little company. We're based out of Cairns in far north Queensland and do research and development for cropping systems for Northern Australia. So we've got a couple of things on the go. One of them, as Greg mentioned, the CRC Northern Australia and co-funded GRDC project looking at oilseeds adapted to the north. We're running with AgriFutures national agronomy trials on sesame. We're just starting a future food systems trial with pulses, and then we work with individual industry partners to develop their crops in the north. So people like Sunrise that have aspirations for Northern Australian rice again. We work with Grow Resources from their super high lake safflower, and back on sesame, Equinom out of Israel for their non-dehiscent sesame varieties. So yeah, as Greg mentioned, 2 weeks ago we held our spring field day back at Mareeba, and yeah, great response similar to this. 100 odd people there, which says to me that the interest and the excitement about Northern Australian agriculture is just right, and we just need to make the most of it and take things forward. So the crops that I can sort of highlight that I'm looking at, I'm not suggesting that they necessarily would all fit into a Northern Territory farming system, but things to think about, but what has to be done to get them to commercial reality. So in the oilseed space, I think sesame is a big one, and it's been in the Territory in the past. I'm not sure how many people in this room went to the 1995 first Australian Sesame Workshop. Very good. And it was the last Australian Sesame Workshop we've had.
Thanks, James.
But there will be one in the future. Just a word of caution, certainly if people are interested in sesame, do focus on what are known as the non-dehiscent or non-shattering types. If we're going to talk mechanical harvesting of these grains, anything that has high shatter losses is going to be a waste of time. As I said, Grow Resources are looking at safflower, so a very good drought and heat tolerant winter option for growers. And the whole objective of my business is to identify rotational systems that are diverse and sustainable around some of our pillar crops. So here it looks likely that that's going to be cotton as a broadacre crop, but also supportive to the livestock and cattle industry. For us, back on the east coast, sugarcane is another part of our farming system. So a diverse range of crops, be they oil seeds that may have particular benefits in the farming system, whether they're cash crops, big, strong, deep-rooted tap system, some of the brassicas that have good biofumigation roles to play, or even something like sesame that can be a suppressant for nematodes. We also look at pulse crops, so chickpeas I think is another one that warrants looking up here. It grows well in Kununurra. We've got some excellent trials with it in North Queensland, so quite similar environment. But they're the easy picking ones that are grains, that are commodities that can have a market if we can pack or clean, pack and grade containers and send them to market, and most logically out of Darwin, rather than shipping them all the way back to Brisbane or elsewhere to be processed. Hence why the feasibility study is being done on a local gin to take out that freight component. So that's a big thing, what's going to take some of these grains forward. Then you start looking at other opportunities in the cash crop sector that can fit into northern farming systems, but a lot of them may require some level of primary processing to get them to a stage that we have a high value marketable product. Sesame again, we could turn that into sesame oil and keep the protein meal locally and use that as a supplement in feed. Same can be said for a lot of the oil seeds, that if we can crush them locally and put just the high value component onto the road, so 35% of the weight of safflower is oil, but 65% of that could be used in feed rations locally rather than bringing stock feed protein meals up from the south. There's also obviously a change in the market for whether it's plant-based proteins for humans or plant-based proteins or lipids in the aquaculture sector that's growing in Northern Australia. These are all things that we could tap into with some level of primary processing. And although we normally talk about those as byproducts, they're really just co-products that we could utilise somewhere nearby. So we're interested in pulses where we could see tropical crops like cowpeas or mung beans used up here in the farming system as a rotational crop, but with huge value sitting behind them. We know that the pulse or the plant-based protein market is going to grow, and it's not there to displace the livestock industry because it won't be able to keep up with demand. But if you think about pulses, if we go and buy a kilo of mince from Coles, I'm not sure what it is now, $5, $8 a kilo. And normally cowpeas or mung beans are being paid $1,000 or $1,500 or $1.50 a kilo. There's some discrepancy there in terms of the value we put on plant-based proteins. So that needs to be looked at, but again, it requires processing to get to that stage. And the other thing that we're all focused on now is health and well-being. So there's crops like buckwheat, like quinoa, like fenugreek that are high value, fit into the health and well-being sector, whether it's buckwheat for gluten-free pancakes for breakfast or puffed quinoa to go on your puffy breakfast. They're all options, but again, they require processing to turn them into the high-value commodities we see on our supermarket shelf. And then we're also looking at other crops that are in the cover crop field as well. So one of those that could have a fit here in the territory is sun hemp. I asked Greg about it yesterday. We've had some great success with growing sun hemp just as a green manure cover crop and had extraordinary yields of, well, this is oven dried, so putting it in the oven and drying all the moisture out of it, 20 tonne of dry matter within 8 weeks over the wet season, and put that organic matter, which is legume based. All of the benefits that Greg said why we use millet, brings up nutrition from below, can help suppress diseases, large amounts of organic matter, but something like sun hemp in a mix maybe with millet that is also leguminous based can put nitrogen into the system. And we also do cover crop mixes as well, but sun hemp's also been used as livestock feed in other tropical parts of the world. But I could go on for hours. If anyone's interested in the whole range of different crops and things we look at and what we're doing, I do have a handout, an electronic copy of a handout I could email to anyone that's interested. But I think, if we think about the farming systems and if we're talking cotton as a pillar crop here, what you can grow around it to make that farming system sustainable and profitable, to show those that think that we're going to rape and pillage the country by increasing these crops in Northern Australia, that we are thinking long term about what our soil resources mean, how to better utilise and get the efficiency out of our water by thinking of just a system and a diverse one rather than just individual crops in isolation of one another.
Thanks, Tony.